Houseof Night Series book, the first one marked. And I believe yesterday I stopped on chapter 7. So I'm going to continue from chapter 7. I'm just trying to figure out a way to set up my phone there. um, yeah, so I'm going to start at chapter 7. Here goes marked. What time is it? We were walking down a narrow hall that curved gently. The walls are made of an odd mixture of dark stone and jutting brick, every so often flickering gaslights that hung from the old-fashioned looking black iron sconces stuck out of the wall, giving off the soft yellow glow that was, thankfully, really easy on my eyes. There were no windows in the hall, and we didn't meet anyone else, even though I kept peeking around nervously, imagining my first glimpse of vampire kids. It is nearly 4 a.m., which means classes have been out for almost an hour, Neferret said, and then she smiled slightly at what I'm sure was my totally shocked expression. Classes begin at 8 p.m. and end at 3 a.m., she explained. Teachers are available until 3:30 a.m. to give students extra help. The gym is open until dawn, the exact time of which you will always know as soon as you have completed the change. Until then, dawn time is clearly posted in the classrooms, common rooms, and gathering areas, including the dining hall, library, and gym. Nyx's temple, of course, open at all hours, but formal rituals are held twice a week after school. The next ritual will be tomorrow. Neferet glanced at me, her slight smile warmed. It seems so overwhelming now, but you'll catch on quickly, and your roommate will help you, as will I. I was just getting ready to open my mouth to ask another question when an orange ball of fur ran into the hall and without a sound hurled itself into Neferet's arms. I jumped and made a little squeeze sound. Then I felt like a total fool when I saw the orange ball of fur was not a flying boogeyman or whatever, but a massively big cat. Neferet laughed and scratched the furball's ears. Zoe, meet Skylar. He's usually prowling around here waiting to launch himself at me. That's the biggest cat I've ever seen, I said, reaching my hand out to let him sniff me. Careful, he's a known biter. Before I could jerk my hand out of the way, Skylar started rubbing his face on my fingers. I held my breath. Neferet tilted her head to the side as if she was listening to words in the wind. He likes you, which is definitely unusual. He doesn't like anyone except me. He even keeps the other cats away from this end of the campus. He's really a terrible bully, she said fondly. I carefully scratched Skylar's ears like Neferet had been doing. I like cats, I said softly. I used to have one, but when my mom got remarried, I had to give it to the street cats to be adopted. John, her new husband, doesn't like cats. I found that a way the person feels about cats and the way they feel about him or her in return is usually an excellent gauge by which to measure a person's character. I looked up from the cat to meet her green eyes and saw that she understood a lot more about freaky family issues than she was saying. It made me feel connected to her, and automatically my stress level relaxed a little. Are there a lot of cats here? Yes, there are. Cats have always been closely allied with vampires. Okay, I already knew that. In world history, Mr. Shaddix, better known as Puff Shaddy, but don't tell him, we learned that in the past, cats have been slaughtered because it was thought that they somehow turned people into vampires. Yeah, okay, talk about ridiculous. More evidence of the ridiculousness of humans. The thought popped into my mind, shocking me by how easily I'd already started thinking of normal people as humans, therefore something different than me. Do you think I could have a cat? I asked. If one chooses you, you will belong to him or her. Chooses me? Neferet smiled and stroked Skylar, who closed his eyes and purred loudly. Cats choose us. We don't own them. As if to demonstrate what she said was true, Skylar jumped out of her arms and with a stuck-up flick of his tail disappeared down the hall. Neferet laughed. He's really awful, but I do adore him. I think I would, even were it not part of my gift from Nyx. Gift? Skylar is a gift from the goddess? Yes, in a way. Every high priestess is given an affinity, what you would probably think of as special powers by the goddess. It's part of the way we identify our high priestess. The affinities can be unusual cognitive skills like reading minds or having visions or being able to predict the future, or the affinity can be for something in the physical realm, like a special connection to one of the four elements or to animals. I have two goddess gifts. My main affinity is for cats. I have a connection with them that is unusual even for a vampire. Nyx also has given me an unusual powers of healing. She smiled, which is why I know you're healing well, my gift told me. Wow, that's amazing, was all I could think to say. My head was already reeling from the events of the past day. Come on, let's get you to your room. I'm sure you're hungry and tired. Dinner will start in... Nefret cocked her head to the side as if someone was weirdly whispering the time to her. An hour. She gave me a knowing smile. Vampires always know what time it is. That's cool, too. That, my dear fledgling, is just the tip of the cool iceberg. I hoped her analogy didn't have anything to do with Titanic-sized disasters. As we continued walking down the hall, I thought about time and stuff, and remembered the question I had started to ask when Skylar had interrupted my easily derailed train of thought. So wait, you said classes start at 8? At night? Okay, I'm usually not this slow, but some of this was like speaking a foreign language to me. I was having a hard time getting it. Once you take a moment to think about it, you'll understand that having classes at night is only logical. Of course, you must know that vampires, adult or fledgling, don't explode or any other such fictional nonsense if subjected to direct sunlight, but it is uncomfortable for us. Wasn't the sunlight already difficult for you to bear yesterday? I nodded. My Maui gems didn't even help much. Then I added quickly, feeling moronic again. Maui gems are sunglasses. Yes, Zoe, Neferet said patiently. I know sunglasses very well, actually. Oh, God, I'm so sorry. I broke off, wondering whether it was okay for me to say God. Would it offend Neferet, a high priestess who wore her goddess mark so proudly? Hell, would it offend Nyx? Oh, God, what about saying hell? It was my favorite cuss word ever. Okay, it was really the only cuss word I use regularly. Could I still say it? The people of faith predicted that vampires worshipped a false goddess and that they were mostly selfish, dark creatures who cared about nothing except money and luxury and drinking blood, and they were all certainly going straight to hell. So wouldn't that mean I should watch how and where I use Zoe? I looked up to find Neferet studying me with a concerned expression and realized that she had probably been trying to get my attention while I babbled inside my head. I'm sorry, I repeated. Neferet stopped. She put her hands on my shoulders and turned to me so that I had to face her. Zoe, quit apologizing, and remember, everyone here has been where you are. This is new to all of us. We know what it feels like to fear the change. The shock at your life, being turned into something foreign, and not being able to control any of it, I added quietly, that too. It won't always be this bad. When you're a mature vampire, your life will seem your own again. You'll make your own choices, go your own way. Follow the path down which your heart and soul and talents lead you. If I become a mature vampire, you will, Zoe. How can you be so sure? Neferet's eyes found a darkened mark on my forehead. Nyx has chosen you for what we don't know, but her mark has been clearly placed upon you. She would have not touched you, only to see you fail. I remember the goddess's words, Zoe Redbird, daughter of night. I name you my eyes and ears in the world today, a world where good and evil are struggling to find balance. And I looked quickly away from Neferet's sharp gaze, wishing desperately that I knew why my gut is telling me to keep my mouth shut about my meeting with the goddess. It's just a lot happened all in one day. Certainly is, especially on an empty stomach. We had started walking again when the sound of ringing cell phone made me jump. Neferet sighed and smiled apologetically at me. Then she fished a small phone out of her pocket. Neferet, she said. She listened for a little while, and I saw her forehead wrinkle and her eyes narrow. No, you were right to call me. I'll come back and check on her. And she flipped the phone shut. I'm sorry, Zoe. One of the fledglings broke her leg earlier today. It seems she's having trouble resting, and I should go back and be sure all is well with her. Why don't you follow this hallway around the left until you come to the main door? You can't miss it. It's large and made of very old wood. Right outside is a stone bench. You can wait there for me. I won't be long. Okay, no problem. But before I'd finished speaking, Neferet had already disappeared back down the winding hallway. I sighed. I didn't like the idea of being myself in a place that was full of vampire and vampire kids. And now that Neferet was gone, the little flickering lights didn't seem so welcoming. It seemed spooky, throwing ghostly shadows against the stone hall. Determined not to freak myself out, I started slowly down the hall in the direction we had been heading. Pretty soon I almost wished I'd run into some other vampire people. It was too quiet and creepy. A couple of times the hall branched off to the right, but like Neferet told me, I kept to my left. Actually, I also kept my eyes to the left because the other halls had hardly any lights in them. Unfortunately, the next right-hand turn of the hall, I didn't avert my eyes. Okay, so the reason made sense. I heard something. To be more specific, I heard a laugh. It was soft, girly laugh for some reason, made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It also made me stop. I peeked down the hall and saw movement in the shadows. Zoe. My name was whispered from the shadows. I blinked in surprise. Had I really heard my name, or was I imagining things? The voice was almost familiar. Could it be Nyx again? Was the goddess calling my name? Almost as afraid as I was intrigued, I held my breath and took a few steps into the side hall. As I walked around the gentle bend, I saw something ahead of me that made me stop and automatically move closer to the wall. In a little alcove not far from me were two people. At first, I couldn't make my mind process what I was seeing. Then I understood. I should have gotten out of there then. I should have backed away silently and tried not to think about what I'd seen, but I didn't do any of those things. It was like my feet were suddenly so heavy I couldn't pick them up. All I could do was watch. The man, and then a little jolt of additional shock. I realized he wasn't a man. He was a teenager, not more than a year or so older than me. He was standing with his back pressed against the stone of the alcove. His head was tilted back and he was breathing hard. His face was in the shadows, but even though he was only partially visible, I could see he was handsome. Then another breathy little laugh drew my eyes downward. She was on her knees in front of him. All I could see was her blonde hair. There was so much of it, it looked like she was wearing a veil. Then her hands moved up, running along the guy's thighs. Go! My mind screamed at me. Get out of there! I started to take a step back. Then his voice made me freeze. Stop! My eyes got huge for a second. I thought he was talking to me. You don't really want to. I felt almost dizzy with relief when she spoke. He was talking to her, not me. They didn't even know I was there. Yes, I do. It sounded as if he was grinding his words from beneath his teeth. Get off your knees. You like it. You know you like it. Just like you know you still want me. Her voice was all husky and trying to be sexy, but I could also hear the whine in it. She sounded almost desperate. I watched her fingers move and my eyes widen in amazement when she drew the nail of her index finger down his thigh. Unbelievably, her fingernail slashed through his jeans, just like it was a knife, and a line of flesh blood appeared, startling in its liquid redness. I didn't want to, and it grossed me out, but the sight of it had my mouth starting to water. No, he snapped, putting his hands on her shoulders and trying to push her away from him. Oh, quit pretending, she laughed again, mean, sarcastic sound. You know we'll always be together. She reached up with her tongue and licked the long line of blood. I shuddered. Ugh, against my will, it was completely mesmerized. Cut it out, he said, pushing her shoulders. I don't want to hurt you, but you're really starting to piss me off. Why can't you understand? We're not doing this anymore. I don't want you. You want me. You'll always want me, she said, unzipping his pants. I shouldn't be there. I shouldn't be seeing this. I tore my eyes from his bloody thigh and took one step back. His eyes lifted. He saw me. And then something truly bizarre happened. I could feel his touch through our eyes. I couldn't look away from him. The girl in front of him seemed to disappear, and all there was in the hallway was him and me, and the sweet, beautiful smell of his blood. You don't want me? That's not how it looks now, she said with a nasty purr in her voice. I felt my head begin to shake back and forth. At the same time, he cried, No! And tried to push her out of the way so he could move towards me. I ripped my eyes away from him and stumbled back. No, he said again. This time I knew he was speaking to me and not her. She must have realized it too, because with the cry that sounded uncomfortably like the snarl of an animal, she started to whirl around. My body unfroze. At the same instant, I turned and ran back down the hall. I expected them to come after me, so I kept running until I reached the huge old doors Nefert had described. Then I stood there, leaning against their cold wood, trying to get my breath under control so I could listen for the sounds of running feet. What would I do if they chased me down? My head was pounding painfully, and I felt weak and totally scared and completely grossed out. Yes, I was aware of the whole oral sex thing. I doubt if there's a teenager alive in America who isn't aware that most of the adult public think we're giving guys blowjobs like they used to give guys gum. Or maybe more appropriately, suckers. Okay, that's just bullshit. It's always made me mad. Not all teenagers have sex. Not all teenagers drink. We are individuals, and stereotyping is not cool at all. Okay, so I knew about the whole blowjob issue. I definitely never seen one. So what I had just seen freaked me out. But what it freaked me out more was the fact that the blonde was basically sexually assaulting the poor guy. Was the way I had responded to seeing his blood. I wanted to lick it too. And that's just not normal. Then there's the whole issue about me sharing the weird look with him. What had that been about? Zoe, are you alright? Hell, I gasped and jumped. Neferet standing behind me, looking at me with total confusion. Are you feeling ill? No way I could tell her what I just seen. My head just really hurts. I finally managed to say, and it was true, I had a killer headache. Let me help you. Neferet placed her hand lightly over the line of stitches on my forehead. She closed her eyes, and I could hear her whispering something in a language I could not understand. Then her hand started to feel warm, and it was as if the warmth became liquid and my skin absorbed it. I closed my eyes and sighed in relief as the pain in my head began to fade. Better? Yes, I barely whispered. She took her hand away and I opened my eyes. That should keep the pain away. I don't know why it would suddenly come back with such force. Me neither, but it's gone now, I said quickly. She stared at me silently for a while I held my breath, and then she said, "Anything upset you?" I swallowed. I'm a little scared about meeting my new roommate, which technically wasn't a lie. It wasn't what had upset me, but I was scared about it. Nefret's smile was kind. "All will be well, Zoe. Now let me introduce you to your new life." Nefret opened the thick wooden door, and we walked out into a large courtyard that fronted the school. She stepped aside and let me gawk. Teenagers were wearing uniforms that somehow looked cool and unique, while still being similar, walked in small groups across the courtyard and along sidewalks. I could hear the deceptively normal sound of their voices as they laughed and talked. I kept staring from them to the school, not sure which to gawk at first. I chose the school. It was the less intimidating of the two, and I was scared I'd see him. The place was something out of a dream. It was the middle of the night, and it should be deeply dark, but there was a brilliant moon shining above the high old oaks and shaded everything. Freestanding gas lights, housed in tarnished copper fixtures, followed the sidewalk that ran parallel to the huge red brick and black rock building. It was there, stories tall, and had a weirdly high rooftop that pointed up and then flattened off at the top. I couldn't see the heavy drapes that had been opened, and soft yellow lights made shadows dance up and down rooms, giving the entire structure an alive, welcoming look. A round tower was attached to the front of the building, furthering the illusion that the place was much more castle-like than school-like. I swear a moat would have looked more like it belonged there than a sidewalk ringed by thick azalea bushes and a neat lawn. Across from the main building was a smaller one that looked older and church-like. Behind it, in the old oaks that shaded the schoolyard, I could see the shadow of an enormous stone wall that surrounded the entire school. In front of the church building was a marble statue of a woman who was wearing long, flowing robes. "Nix!" I blurted. Nefret lifted one eye in surprise. "Yes, Zoe, that is the statue of the goddess. And the building behind it is her temple." She motioned for me to walk with her down the sidewalk and gestured expansively at the impressive campus that stretched before us. What is known today as the House of Night was built in the Neo-French Norman style, with stones imported from Europe, and it originated in the mid-1920s as an Augustine monastery for the people of faith. Eventually, it was converted into Cascadia Hall, a private preparatory school for affluent human teenagers. When we decided we must open a school of our own in this part of the country, we bought it from Cascadia Hall 5 years ago. I only vaguely recall the days when it had been a stuck-up private school. Actually, the only reason I'd ever thought about it at all was I remember hearing the news that a whole herd of kids who went to Cascadia Hall had been busted for drugs, and how shocked the adults have been. Whatever, no one else had been shocked that those rich kids were majority into drugs. "I'm surprised they sold it to you guys." Her laugh was low and a little dangerous. "They didn't want to, but we made their arrangement headmaster an offer he couldn't refuse." I walked to her. I wanted to ask her what she meant. Her laugh gave me a sketchy I'm not showing my boobs. Her laugh gave me a skin crawly feeling. And plus I was busy. I couldn't stop staring. Okay, the first thing I noticed was that everyone who had a solid vampire tattoo was incredibly good looking. I mean, it was totally insane. Yes, I knew that vampires were attractive. Everyone knew that. The most successful actors and actresses in the world were vampires. They were also dancers, musicians, authors, singers. Vampires dominated the arts, which is only one reason they had so much money, and also that the people of faith consider them selfish and immoral. Really? They're just jealous that they're not as good looking or talented. The people of faith would go see their movies, plays, concerts, buy their books and their art, but at the same time they talk about them and look down on them. And God knows they'd never ever mix with them. Can you say hypocrites? Anyway, being surrounded by so many totally gorgeous people made me want to crawl under a bench, even though many of them greeted Nefret and then smiled and said hello to me too. Between hesitantly returning their hellos, I snuck looks at the kid who walked by us. Each one of them nodded respectfully to Neferet. Several of them bowed formally to her and crossed their fists over their hearts, which made Neferet smile and bow slightly in response. Okay, the kids weren't as gorgeous as the adults. Sure, they were nice looking, interesting actually, with their crescent moon outlines and their uniforms that looked more like runway designs than school clothes. But they didn't have glossy, inhumanely attractive light that radiated from inside each of the adult vampires. Ugh, I did notice that. I had suspected their uniforms had a lot of basic black in them, but I suppose if I was going to be honest, I'd have to admit it looked good on them. The black mixed with tiny plaid lines of deep purple, dark blue, and emerald green. Each uniform had an ornate design embroidered gold or silver on either its jacket breast pocket or blouse pocket. I could tell some of the designs were the same, but I couldn't exactly see what they were. Also, there was a weirdly large number of kids with long hair. Seriously. The girls had long hair, the guys had long hair, the teachers had long hair, even the cats that wandered across the sidewalk were long-haired balls of fur. Odd. Good thing I talked to myself out of getting my hair cut in that short duck butt style Kayla had cut hers off in last week. I also noticed that the adults and kids had one other thing in common. Their eyes all lingered with obvious curiosity on my mark. Great. I was beginning my new life as an anomaly, which I figured as much about. It sucked. Now, you guys, usually I would read another chapter, but I'm gonna have to go to work soon, so it's just one chapter for now. But next time I read, it'll be more. So I love you guys. Spreading positive energy. Please don't show me to show my boobs again, whoever person you are. That's very inappropriate. But anyway, y'all have a great day.